This meeting is now being recorded.
Hi everyone, this is Bill.
Hey Bill, this is Jason.
Hey Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. No complaints on my side.
Other than it got real cold on us real quick.
Yeah, someone opened the refrigerator. Or everybody opened their refrigerators at once. Hi, is this Greg?
This is Tony. How you doing, Bill?
Hi Tony, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, Bill, I'm here too. This is Greg.
Hey Greg, how you doing?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Good, really good. Well, I thought we get started if everybody's okay. We have several more that are registered, but I'm sure they'll be logging in as we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So this is a bit of a different structure that we normally do, but I thought it was a kind of interesting format because I'm certainly being asked a lot of questions about it, and I'm sure and you are all are thinking about this as well, is how do we develop policy around mobile devices? And so I thought that we could do this more from a collaboration amongst many minds, come up with a Uber policy, or at least a framework that then I can send to everybody, the output from this, and that everybody has it for their own records as they develop something that might be more tailored for themselves. Does anybody have any comments on that, or on the kind of session overview that wanted to bring to the table before we get started?
I think it's a great idea, Bill. I'm curious to see how it works out for us.
Cool, great. And I think that I don't see it being much different than what we've always done, but I think the difference is that we'll actually have something sort of as a net result of it, and it's from from several different minds working on it as one. And we've all been exposed to different technologies and techniques and different corporate philosophies, and I think from that point of view, you'll be able to balance this out, that when you're actually in a meeting, if this was so easy, we wouldn't be talking about it. So if you're in a meeting talking to senior executives and such, you can not only say, well, this is what I think we should do, but we can say it's based on collaboration with peers. So that's part of my intent with it. So from a philosophy, I know from some of you on the phone that some of you have varying philosophies. Maybe we should capture the philosophical approaches just from a spectrum of 0 to 10, 0 being like we don't let any mobile devices in to our network, to the other side of the spectrum where we let everything in, and we're trying to develop policy around it now that we have done that. So why don't we just share a couple of philosophical approaches, and then as we go, well, I've formed a kind of an outline here from categories of devices, identity-based access to different issues regarding if someone has someone has their Droid Verizon tablet that has the Droid applications on it, they can hit Salesforce, for example, direct. What's our policy about accessing or in HR applications versus coming into company applications? How many device type category policy around? And I just put a couple. These are meant to change and grow or shorten, but data loss, backups, encryption, time bombing, remote wipe, any other technology capabilities that we want to bring up, and in situations. I think this is kind of we have contractors bringing devices, kiosk access at home, employees on the road, employees at work that are bringing their own tablets. So you have a corporate use of internet, yet they want to surf the internet on their tablet, direct 4G into the wireless. So let's start with philosophy. Does anybody want to help me get started there?
This is Jason. I can get started. So instead, without addressing each one of those points individually, I would say we're probably a 7 on your scale, where we allow tablet or phone-based devices which are Wi-Fi enabled, we pretty much enable those to do what they need to do on our network. If it's a computer device, then we only allow it to have internet access. It doesn't get any access to our secure network. So we do help enable that in all cases.
Allowing tablets and phone, but to access. And can you repeat the last part, Jason?
We allow tablets and phone on our Wi-Fi network internally at all locations. If it's a laptop-based device, so if it's either a Windows, Linux, or Apple, we won't specify any. We'll allow it internet access only. It does not get file level or Active Directory authentication. Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
This is Tony. I could add to that. The only other difference with mine is it's only BlackBerry and iOS devices that get access on the Wi-Fi. Laptop is the same policy.
So Bez and iOS have you allow them access to applications.
Well, the only application they're really getting is email, but
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Jim DePietro. Just to beat out Jason there, we're about an 8. We allow iPhones and Droids and all those. We basically use Citrix from the tablets, although we don't restrict. I don't know if you guys restrict any kind of file attachments or attaching to, there's some apps out there that let you sign in and connect to shares. I haven't eliminated that. I don't know of anyone using it right now, but I would like to stop that if I could.
So you're allowing. So Jim, just to repeat yourself for my so I can understand. Are you saying that you don't allow the file access now, or you do to these other devices via Citrix?
We don't. Well, through Citrix we do. We do, although there's no real on iPads. There's no real drive. Yeah. But there are apps out there I can get from my iPad to connect to my file shares that gotcha. I don't prohibit, and that's a little concerning to me. But again, I have such a big hole. Someone could come in with a USB drive and download whatever they want. So, I'm wrestling with this whole policy saying, geez, I'm going to plug this hole if I spend a lot of money, but I got a lot of gaping holes in other areas that I haven't addressed. So, I'm wrestling with the logic of that.
I think Jim made a really good point, and I'll echo that. We don't inhibit, but we also don't enable in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a big distinction between that.
Yeah.
So you don't inhibit access, but you don't enable either. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So they're kind of on their own. If they find a cool, innovative way of doing it, then we learn about it, and then I think the stage we're at now is educating ourselves and figuring out which one of those things makes sense and which ones we do want to enable or encourage.
And I guess the thing about, again, I don't know if you guys prohibit the use of USB drives, but, for someone to take data out of this building, I guess the tablets and the Wi-Fi's and that makes it easier, makes it a little more remote, a little more covert. But again, they can come in here and put a USB drive in their machine and download stuff and walk out the door. So,
yeah,
I
don't want to just throw up my hands, but I'm throwing up my hands, I guess.
Well, let's. I did have a. Where is my section here on policy? I should probably put a section here on USB. So I guess we're sort of talking about interesting policy, but then we have the unique perspective on what we can enforce. So. Is part of the output for today's meeting to talk about what we want what can we do from a policy perspective, but we can't enforce necessarily or are unwilling to enforce based on corporate culture, and what are the things we're actually willing to take on from an enforcement point of view.
Sam McNicken from American Chemistry Council, but I think it actually goes beyond that. The question for me is, as a moving toward the vision of mobile user, how can I enable my folks to get what they need to be able to do their job? So if it was left to me, I'd restrict access to everything because I'm the security Nazi. Mm-hmm. But my organization says no. My CEO says, no, I want this as wide open and easily accessible as possible. Now, how do I balance that with my, inane, I guess, instinct to lock everything down? Mm-hmm. Do I do, is it through written policy? And, if somebody does happen to walk away with a USB full of information that somehow makes its way onto the internet, then, do I have a get out of jail free card?
Probably not.
Right.
But there's the thing: if we can restrict it by technology, do we really need policy? Other than stating, does the policy guide people's practice?
Well, the policy should also dictate what you're doing technologically.
Yeah, from a notification standpoint, but there's nothing that really has to guide people's actions if you've taken care of it through technology.
Right. Yeah, from a cybersecurity perspective, we work with the chemical industry here at the American Chemistry Council, and specifically with cybersecurity. And that's one of the things that they're actually working on right now. We are actually working on with our members and trying to educate our government on, what are the standards that should be out there relating to cybersecurity that is not going to kill our organizations or our members' ability to, produce chemicals out there. And for us, it's to produce information, I guess, and advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the pieces that comes up with this policy part is if you have a content, if you have a right use for a company-owned machine on a corporate local area network that is coming out through your security infrastructure and hitting a variety of resources they need to do their job. There's a web surfing policy. However, when you have a mobile device, you bring your mobile device, whether it's a company-owned phone or not, that's a web-enabled browser. They can do what they want because there's no way for the corporation to have any sort of lockdown on that, or at least it's harder to do that. And so they can also hit company cloud resources that are simple, like human resources websites and Salesforce and things like that. So, from a policy perspective, is that something that one states that no matter what device one has, you have to follow the same standards of corporate use that you would have as if you were behind the corporate company firewall?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. In the policy that I'm currently crafting right now, it says pretty much that, I'm trying to think of it off the top of my head, but an individual device, once connected to our network, has now has to be treated as a company device, whether that's an iPad, iOS, iPhone, Android, or any kind of Android device, a BlackBerry, a laptop, whatever the case may be. The other thing that I'm working to try and do is implement a mobile device management solution, and I'm currently looking at AirWatch as well as Mobile Iron to help me with that piece of it.
Do you plan to have your users accept the policy, hit the box, and either that or they're not on the network?
That is correct, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they don't, not only are they not on the network, but they don't even get access to email.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing that as a part of NAC or part of the mobile device management tool?
As part of the mobile device management.
Okay.
Yeah, right now the only way we can restrict it is primarily through, or not restrict it, but put any type of restriction on mobile devices is through ActiveSync in Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
We've basically here at the ACC, with the exception of our finance application, everything else is web enabled. So as long as you have your user ID and your password, you should be able to connect to it from any device.
I brought up this point, identity-based access to applications, but so I guess if you can identify a user who has an identity within the company that has gone through the human resource process, then they would normally be given a rights to applications on your network based on their hiring, based on their level of hire, based on who they are. So I guess in some respects that if they are in the directory structure of your network, they've been given the appropriate rights and permissions to applications that would then adhere to whatever device they are going to be using. Would that be a fair statement?
I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late. This is Jim Albert with Nutrition, and I'm curious. Are we under the assumption that everybody on these devices has already authenticated through some sort of SSL VPN type of authentication, or what's the sort of realm we're considering?
Good question, Jim. I think Sam, you might want to just go back through what you said, but I think it's you're trying to apply security to cyber access, secure access through to any applications, all applications, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Regardless of device type.
Because at this point in your conversation, it almost seems like now we're talking about authentication, correct?
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's Sam McMakin with the American Chemistry Council. I think the way we got there was, I made a comment from our internal policy, which I'm currently working on, mobile device management policy. What I'm working on is the ability to enable a mobile device management solution such as Mobile Iron or AirWatch. I get them confused sometimes. Working on and investigating those, and that being the only way that our employees can actually access our network or our network resources, whether it be email, whether it be their timesheet, whatever the case may be.
And in terms of mobile, are we actually making a distinction of something small, a handheld device, or a laptop, or someone working from home just as well considered? I mean, mobile and remote, are we making actually a distinction between that? So someone working at home, and they're not necessarily mobile, but they're certainly remote.
Yeah, there's an additional layer on that piece of it. The way I describe mobile is any non-corporate device or any small handheld corporate device. So that would include, as an example, if we have internally issued laptops, those are actually, to me, they're considered mobile devices, but they don't need to go in through the mobile device management solution because they're already controlled on our network through Cisco VPN, from that particular piece of it. They're internally managed through AD, but anything that's not specifically managed by AD. Now, I guess the way that we got on the authentication piece was I mentioned that right now the only way that we have to restrict or place any policies on mobile devices is through our Exchange ActiveSync, and right now we're just enforcing a PIN.
I'm curious because our company just simply doesn't use anything really much beyond the laptops for mobile or remote. So I'm just kind of curious why one even needs to make a distinction between a handheld or a laptop. It seems like they'd all simply fall under the same. It's not on my VPN. It's not I need some way of authenticating it. So why even make a distinction? But like I said, I don't have a lot of corporate experience with using those devices, so I'm kind of a noob in terms of that.
Yeah, I look at it from a laptop perspective. If it's already on our network and sitting in a docking station inside our office, then it's managed by...
Oh, certainly inside your office, but in terms of take the laptop home, a lot of my employees work from home, so
Right.
but we all use laptops. I'm just wondering why the distinction between a laptop or a Palm L-top or a tablet or whatnot. If it's not on my VPN and it's not within getting behind my firewall within the corporation, I would put it all in the same box, but like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with the. Perhaps they present different challenges, but I'm not aware of them.
Yeah, and I would agree. The only distinction for me is I have no way of controlling an individual's level of, or at least right now, their level of virus protection or internet protection on their personal home laptops or computers. So that would be the only distinction for me.
I would agree then. Right.
It seems that once those devices are, it seems that the closest, with the walls of the castle being pushed down and having multiple access points and sort of corporate mandate to absorb different types of devices, that if that device can see policy that you currently have through a directory structure, then it's fine. But then if it can't, then that's where it gets weird. That's where it gets a bit of an issue. So, how are people handling if someone is on the road and needs to hit an external system that's not on the network, or does that not happen often with people on the phone?
In me, it doesn't happen simply because everyone's authenticated through SSL VPN, so I know who they are.
I'm not sure I completely understand your question, Bill.
Well, if someone has to hit like Salesforce, or they have to hit an HR application that's out and delivered from the internet, but not, I'm not going to use the word cloud because I don't like that word at the moment, but it's an application that's being delivered outside of the company firewall, and somebody needs to do their job by accessing it, but they do not have to be authenticated to Active Directory to access it. They're accessing a service that's being provided to the organization, but they're not part of. They don't need to be in the corporate Active Directory to hit that. And for that matter, for example, you can control what type of web training is being delivered down to the desktop through your regular infrastructure. So if someone's doing web training, we can differentiate that from watching YouTube for other purposes. So you could sort of mitigate and allow all types of things and discriminate. But all of a sudden, when someone brings a tablet and is running that from work, and they're bringing their tablet into work, unless how are you all? How is policy going to be created for that use?
Got it. But I saw there's really two different distinctions in what you stated. So the first one, if I've chosen to outsource a product and put it in the cloud, let's say Salesforce, for example, I really could care less. By the nature of me choosing that decision, I could care less what type of device they use to access it. That's not necessarily my problem. I put the rules and responsibilities in place, and there's only a certain level of those that I can put in play with a product like Salesforce. And then access from inside of my network is a completely different topic.
So yeah, I've had to read these policies recently that are being created by legal departments, and they really don't match reality, and that's what's a bit of a struggle. It's like I totally get what you're saying, Jason, that it's not the problem of the CIO from a say that you could actually do something about it if something happened, but do we address some of these things with policy and state in the employee handbook that an employee must adhere to the same policies that they would normally adhere to behind a company firewall when they're using a mobile device when accessing applications that don't require, I don't know what the word to say would be, but when they don't require access in the company network to go to.
Sure, I think you can say it all you want, but if you can't enforce it at a technological level, it's almost moot.
Right, I was going to agree, saying how would I prevent somebody from bringing in their own laptop and connecting it to my internal network and just putting on DHCP and getting access with that when I would prefer that laptop not be brought into my network. I suppose if I registered a list of 1,000 MAC addresses or something and didn't match the MAC address, it's not given DHCP. I guess that's up to the capabilities of the firewall or the DHCP firewall you're using. But yeah, a lot of it just comes down to you don't do these things, and if we catch you, that's a violation. So yeah, a lot of it's hard.
But in your point, you're assuming that device is connecting from your trusted network. What if they're in a hotel, right? So
Well, of course, yeah. In the case of using SSL VPN and using certificate-based, could they export their certificate and place it someplace else and get access and download the SSL VPN software? Yeah, I guess it's the same situation. Of course, which devices can I restrict, and how else could you restrict them other than by MAC address, I suppose? And then could you just as well set that rogue device's MAC address to one that's already been known? Yeah, I don't know how you solve that.
The question is whether you want to solve it or not.
Right. Yeah, really I think that's a good point.
Just how much of a control freak are you, and what's
well, it's not about whether you're a control freak or not. It's about what your business needs you to enable them to be able to do. It's not really an IT problem. The problem is for us to put technologies in place to support either the philosophy or the rules by which the company operates.
Correct, but like I said, it goes back to the question, is it solvable? So if it's not solvable, then it's simply policy. So I think that was the crux of the question, but maybe I missed something.
So is it fair to say that that some people on the phone going to be having policies without necessarily, and just let business know that this is going to have to be a training and education and awareness part of the plan, and not necessarily something that can be enforced with the technology?
Yeah, in my case, yes. Jim from Netrition, I would agree with that.
Does anybody else have areas that are similar?
This is Jason. Yes, actually, we approach that in many cases. We choose to not do it technologically.
Yeah, Sam McMakin with the American Chemistry Council. Same thing here. I mean, from our legal and senior leadership philosophy is that we expect our employees to act with a certain amount of business conduct associated with our HR and association policies. And if they can't comply with that, then that's really when we have to look at what the result is from that. Again, from our perspective, it is my job to, as I believe someone else here said, is enable advocacy within our organization and do that to the level of, I guess, importance that's placed on the data within our systems. I also, conversely, I struggle with, saving our organization from itself sometimes because of the lack of, I can't even think of a good word to put into this particular description, but for lack of knowledge, let's say, of data that we have. Sometimes we just, I think there's no amount of convincing that can take place. So we're kind of stuck in between. Well, we can make this as wide open as possible, but recognize that our data could walk away, and hearing that, well, what do we have that's so important that can't walk away? What are they going to do?
I'm Jim from Netrition, going through like a payment card industry PCI process. A lot of it simply comes down to policy. You have these policies in effect, and are you enforcing them and reviewing them? So policy plays a huge role in this.
Yeah, Jim, so I would certainly appreciate any information that you have from a PCI perspective. We're going through that as well, but it doesn't seem to be overly restrictive because I think we're almost at the lowest level of PCI compliance. So
I'm at the opposite level because we take cards and we do our own processing, so we have to hold the card on our disk. So yeah, it's a huge. I've been spending the past 2 years conforming to it. It's a monstrous project. And a lot of it simply is, I say half of it is technology, half of it is simply policy and having the right documents in place and our employees reviewing them. And the ones that can be enforced, are they being enforced? And the ones that have to be enforced by people, are the people enforcing them? So, yeah, a lot of it is just an exercise in writing documents and passing them out and making sure people know about them.
Identifying who's watching the watchers, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. So if you ever, I don't know, is anybody else here doing PCI? Other than the one person who responded at a low level?
I think there was one other person on.
But like I said, a lot of it simply is, do you have this policy? If you ever read through the data security standards, it's do you have this policy in effect? Are you reviewing it? Are you doing it? So it'd be like question one: do you have this in place? Are you actually doing it? It's really sometimes some of the questions are a little bit comical to read.
Having some experience in that PCI world, I would agree with you, Jim, and I think that it becomes it's very going to be very hard to tackle mobility with 100% technology enforcement. And I find that actually the education and awareness piece, if that's handled from a philosophy that is education and awareness, and not necessarily the hand of God slapping employee down. I think if it's handled from education awareness, it actually is quite useful and would support the existing security apparatus quite nicely. And we're finding huge progress. It's like the old-fashioned days when you started putting content filters in. You let people know you're putting content filters in. All of a sudden, like, traffic got really fast on the network.
Right. Yes, exactly right. When you announced we're now, when we implemented our Sonic walls with your company, I announced we're going to put, one day I just wanted to see what people were doing. I didn't enforce it anyway. Okay, I'm going to put content filters on starting tomorrow, and then all the warnings and such and whatnot went away.
So as far as let's talk about from building out a policy. Do you and data? Sam, you had mentioned the part about data leaving. Do you philosophically or from a policy or technical perspective want to deal with backing up devices, backing up data that is on mobile devices? And I'm covering. What is your all thoughts on that?
Very good one. So within our policy. Also references our record retention policy and indicates that our repository for all corporate records is within our intranets. We don't even use LAN shares anymore. We use SharePoint. So that it also makes it very clear that mobile devices are not to be used for the storage of records. In addition, that obviously for editing and that type of those types of activities, they're obviously used for that, but should be moved to our corporate repository as soon as possible. And that's done simply through policy. That's all. Okay, great, good point. Great point. Anybody else have an example as I'm building? Hopefully, I already can see the document I'm working on right here. But anybody else have an example of either policy or actually an enforcement option that you all are thinking about or have in place?
This is Tony Bayhip, and I talked to you, Bill, about this. As far as email, I don't have an MDM yet, but it seems like one of the big reasons and drivers to get it is because people, policy or not, are going to inadvertently, if they've got email on their, iPhone, iPad, whatever, and they're going to back it up to their laptop by mistake, or they're going to put it up to the cloud, and now I've got email out there that really isn't supposed to be there. They shouldn't be backing it up. So I don't know what everybody else is doing if they don't have an MDM. How are you enforcing, or maybe you just can't, email just going out to different cloud, personal computers at home? What do you guys, how are you guys taking a look at that?
I can tell you how we do it at the. I shouldn't say we. I can tell you how I do it at the ACC. When I discover that people are accessing their email from home, I tell them it's wonderful because we make sure that they access it through OWA, through the web. But I also make sure that they understand that anytime they're in their email, if they download anything to their personal computer, then in the event that we get sued or their home device then becomes fully discoverable.
Good point. That's a great point.
Yeah, but how? That's right. It would become that's when the problem would arise, or if,
right.
Or I don't know legally if they can go out to everybody's home device that was an employee during a certain time period, but that would be a nightmare. You want to make sure you can say, hey, we've enforced this policy. They're not capable of doing that. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Well,
I guess that's point between MDM is what I'm saying. I don't know how else I can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our legal team takes a bit of a different approach to that. They say that because I'm with you. If I get in, called to the stands and they say to me, okay, well, this is what your written policy says. It says that your employees are required to do this on an annual basis. What are you guys doing to check and ensure that they're actually doing that from an IT perspective? I'm going to have to stand up there and say I really rely on our individual employees to certify that they have followed the general counsel's directive to remove all records associated with this particular, retention policy.
Yeah.
And according to our legal department, that's all we need to do.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yep. Crazy, but it might not even be a legal thing. It might be an operational thing where somebody leaves now. You lock them out. They don't have access to their email. They don't have access to contacts and calendar. But if they're just restoring it from a cloud device, now they still have it. You don't have any control over it. So they're taking all that intellectual property with them. And you don't, you've terminated it. It doesn't matter. So you've got to look at it that way too.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from a perspective of, even if they do restore it from the cloud, my assumption is that the device that they use to connect had to go through ActiveSync, and ActiveSync would require a password to be able to get into that. So once we've gone through and we've disabled their account on AD, getting through OWA to access that email, it wouldn't be possible because the password wouldn't work. That's just my assumption. I haven't tested that theory.
So that's a really good point, though. So this is what a gnarly topic. But what are you seeing legal counsels kicking back in regards to going back and discovering email and other data on devices that are either employee owned or company owned? Has that come up in any situations, either someone who has left the company or is currently employed?
Well, this is Tony again. It has come up here where HR has told us that a terminated employee, for some reason or another, said, "Oh, well, I can just restore and get even though you locked me out, I can restore it and I'll see it still." They volunteered that information. That's sort of what's created the groundswell. And I've got my help desk looking at that now, but it looks like they can restore it and still see it. They can't do anything with it. They can't, because they're not connected anymore, but they could still see it and cut and paste and whatever else is what I'm hearing.
Okay, let's hit an easy one. USBs. What are people doing? What's policy around connecting flash drives to company devices via policy and or enforcement? Jim DePietro, you're unusually quiet.
Well, we have to allow it. I mean, it's part of how we do business. So other than putting some policy together, guiding what they should download and what they shouldn't, I don't know.
Jason, we allow it. We're not restricting it technologically. We do disable the auto run feature so that it doesn't automatically launch in case there's something destructive on it. We also do an initial scan of the device first before it's allowed to connect. But other than that, we don't restrict it.
This is Jim with Nutrition. The last policy was ours as well. So you request the need for it, and it's approved, and then the same procedures, disable auto run and so forth.
Sam McMakin with the American Chemistry Council. We don't really have any specific policy on it other than communications that have come out in the past with respect to our move a couple of years ago when people were ensuring that they had the files that they needed, or when we had to take a system down for maintenance. What we've done from an IT perspective is we've said if you need a USB type device, call the IT help desk, and we will help procure one for you. And what we do when we procure that is we always procure one of the ones that has security associated with it. So when you stick it in, you have to actually put in a password. I guess that doesn't address the fact that people could download everything within our network on these things because they're getting that large nowadays, yet mobile. But it does address the haphazard way in which people tend to leave them laying on tables or wherever the case may be and lose them. So.
This is Tony. Yeah, it's a big hole for us too, and I think it's exasperated because they're so cheap. It's like a mobile phone. You got to at least spend some money and have a month to month. This thing, you could have 10 of them and not think twice about losing it and leaving it and everything else. So.
Is anybody? This is a pretty fascinating topic, but is in regards to? I know a couple of folks on the phone have started to explore this and have some enforcement in place on the data loss side of this, that they can actually see data typed going down to that USB. So yes, they go through the IT department for a specific device that is encrypted, that maybe has a PIN, so that if it does get lost, it is encrypted, it has a PIN. But then they can actually see the device types of data going into the different authorized devices, so that have been issued through IT. Does anybody have any data loss enforcement tools in place or considering?
This is Tony. We were considering it, but we've probably moved MDM above it. Seems like it's sort of taking precedence at this point. So both are gaping holes at this point. So.
Gotcha. Is anybody looking to at handling data loss, if not from a technology perspective, just from a policy, as far as data types that are allowed onto? Is legal coming back and saying that you must have you're allowed to put certain data types onto a USB? I know, Sam, you had mentioned you can't use your mobile devices as storage. What about USBs?
I think from the same perspective, the USBs are used for convenience whenever you don't have access to the internet. Again, we've put everything in the cloud, in our internal cloud, so that, and I apologize for using that word, our internal network accessible from the internet, so that individual employees don't necessarily have to have the mobile device, or I shouldn't say the mobile device, but the USB. But when they're traveling, when they're in an area where if they were to try and connect to the internet, it would cost $12 a minute, that type of thing. They know they're going there ahead of time, or they're going to a conference where they have to do a presentation, and they're not real sure about. For us, it's really a temporary thing, and our record retention policy our mobile device policy, and including the USB piece, points back to the record retention policy, saying that this is our sole repository for corporate records.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Does anybody want to speak to remote wipe and policy? Since I hear a lot of the mobile device MDM vendors being mentioned, and ActiveSync was being mentioned, is anybody looking to have a more flexible remote wipe or a very specific ability to wipe as a part of their policies?
For us at the American Chemistry Council, once we get our MDM solution in, if an individual were to, as an example, put in their password incorrectly 5 times in a row, their device is wiped. If they lose their device, part of what we want to be able to do with the mobile device management solution is be able to lock the device, track the device, remote wipe, separate out the corporate information from the personal information, those types of things. I guess with mobile device management solutions, or the good ones at least, those are pretty standard features.
I'd put a ditto on that, This is Tony. Same.
Okay, great. So I think is it fair to say that with the policies that you're looking to, so you're absorbing some flexibility in the ability to have company-owned and employee-owned devices that are fully managed on MDM? Is that philosophically where people are heading?
Certainly is from my perspective here at the American Chemistry Council. One of the things I will bring up, though, is we talked about mobile device wipe, or remote wipe, I should say. Just thinking about what happens if we've wiped the device, and then all of a sudden our end user comes back and says, "Oh, geez, I found it. It was actually in the back of my briefcase, and so now I want you to put all my pictures back on it. All my personal phone numbers and things like that." So that gets back into the backup side of things, where I think before we had talked about, should we encourage people to back up to the cloud or not? I think from my perspective, I certainly would encourage people to back up to the cloud. But
does anybody have like a forced mechanism where they're pushing data from their mobile devices they're issuing to secure vault in the cloud, where it's just a company-owned vault, where they're dripping, they drip back up the devices in there just to address that situation Sam just talked about?
No, we're not.
So one thing I haven't explored yet, but I was thinking that being a common, I don't know if it's common or not, it's common here at the ACC, but being a repeatable type of fence, so to speak, with a mobile device. I lost it, let's wipe it for security purposes. Oh, I found it now. Pardon me. I'm wondering if mobile device management solutions, and I haven't really delved into that side of it very far yet, even have that capability to be able to back up a specific device. And if that being the case, would that backup remain in the cloud? Would it remain, or I should say, would it remain separate from your network at the solution provider's location, hosted location, or would you put that backup on your internal network? And then discovery becomes a part of that, and legal record retention, because now as folks have alluded, we've backed up the email and things like that. So it's a never-ending circle, I think.
Yeah.
but I think.
Yeah, I have the same question. I'm hoping MDM is the panacea, but I'm doubting it. But
well, I guess even without MDM, though, if someone even today is if the data is lost on a mobile on a laptop or I guess I'm making a differentiation between something that's primarily a consumption device and something they're actually creating documents on. Are most of your if the device is lost, are you actually, is anybody here on the phone concerned about the intellectual property that's on that device if it's just lost?
Well, if it's mobile, we can remote wipe it, right? They just lose everything. But they already understand that when they sign up for it. So if they bring in a personal device, we make them sign a form. It's not the best solution, but that's what we have right now until we can implement some kind of MDM.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I thought through that as well. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if anyone smart enough to get or take a mobile device with the intention of trying to get information from it, they're going to be smart enough to know I'm not putting this thing back on the network or the internet before I try and get this information off. So, and it really revokes the remote wipe piece unless you have it associated with either starting up on a bootable disk that's not connected to the network, that type of thing, or having the device totally encrypted, I guess, would be another. The number of password restrictions, or I should say failures, that would actually remotely wipe the device. Those types of things. We used to put the security, not the security, but the tracking devices on our laptops, and our end users have just basically walked away from laptops and forgotten them somewhere or had them stolen. We've never been able to recover a single one. So because the people that are taking them are smart enough to take them wherever, and they never put them back on the network until they totally changed everything and basically made the tracking information useless.
So, but then you didn't lose any data, right? Did they wipe it out, or?
Well, they don't necessarily have to. I mean, if you pop an operating disk into Ubuntu disk into any remote, well, I shouldn't say remote, but any laptop especially, you can boot from that operating system and get right to the root drive.
What about the encryption piece? What if if the device is encrypted?
To me, that would be part of the saving grace. Absolutely, yes.
So I'm wondering, from the lowest common denominator, just because it's a sort of moving target of this mobility in mobile devices, I wonder if there's no enforcement necessarily in place, if we just need to address it from maybe policy at the lowest, or policy and enforcement at the lowest common denominator, which might be just encrypting the darn thing. Maybe that's the advantage of some of the mobile device platforms. I haven't heard about them backing up, but maybe what type of encryption is enforced on whatever container, whatever it's, can you encrypt on the corporate container and leave the personal stuff alone? And certainly on laptops, can we just make the darn thing irrelevant if it's found, just totally irrelevant? I think the one way maybe the encryption part is just enforcing very simple encryption technologies. Is anybody using any encryption, just for the sake of the group knowledge? Anybody using any clever encryption technology with any known manufacturers?
We're using Sophos for encryption on a fleet of laptops that are deemed that they don't want to lose data. But we've had some issues with them, so I wouldn't suggest it. I guess at this point now, you just, when you buy a laptop, you buy an encrypted hard disk, right? You're done. Problem is managing it all. So with Sophos, it gave us a management console to manage it, but
yeah, with McAfee does the same thing.
Yeah,
certainly McAfee as well.
Yeah.
At the ACC, we use BitLocker here. What we found is we only do this when absolutely necessary. If our folks are traveling to China, as an example, we will encrypt their hard drive. What we found, though, is two things. Number one, it certainly increases I shouldn't say increases. Actually, it does. It increases the response time of the machine, makes it slower. Second thing is God forbid, if the individual that's actually working on the device ever puts anything on their flash drive and now has forgotten their password or anything associated with that, then it becomes a bit of a challenge.
Challenge to recover, right?
Well, it's a challenge to walk them through. You know, and these, most of these, at least that I've investigated, these encryption programs, they do have a hash key or some type of key that will actually make them work. And if you ever lose that key, you are SOL. Unless, you know, some of the folks using Sophos or McAfee may have found something different or a magic feather out there.
I think it's similar with the cloud backups as well. They give you the key to the vault of the backup. So if IT loses that, that's a bit of a challenge as well. But so certainly two interesting options, backing up the data to the cloud. So at least we have the data. Certainly we might not have the device, but at least we have the data. The other piece being just making a device irrelevant. So I guess part of this is trying to think what's the simplest statements for our policies that achieve the most mileage, whether or not we can enforce them or not. But certainly if we can enforce them, it's nice. And it seems like we have two ones there that could be enforced. Sam, I thought we had the most clever piece with the kind of a statement on data just going on to SharePoint. From a policy perspective, that seems to be pretty darn clear, especially if there's some training and education around that.
I forget who the gentleman was, but early in the discussion, somebody mentioned about a device being connected to your network is, you know, regardless if it's personal, is treated as a corporate device. I thought that was a very good statement because then that ties right into whatever your corporate policies are.
Yeah, that was me again, but I don't know that our legal folks actually like that.
Oh, well, I thought that was really nice. I'm going to go talk to my legal about that one.
I'm sorry I kind of delayed in response there. I was trying to find my rough draft of my policy here so that I could bring it up and share the actual information. I've got Windows 8 on my computer here, and I'm still playing a little bit with it. I'll give you the exact wording for that I used for both of those statements. So the interesting challenge is this, you know, and this has come down from my leadership, senior leadership, and that is that the policy that we have is supposed to be an enabler. So what the intent of this thing is to enable our coworkers to be able to, you know, perform advocacy activities more effectively and efficiently while mobile. So that's the whole intent. So to put restrictions on it, to make it more difficult, things like that, my senior leadership is not going to go for that. Mm-hmm. So as an example, we don't want, my CFO, he says, we want to strip the administration out of this. So if we're going to allow people to connect their own devices and we're going to require them to have a device, but we are not going to provide them with a device, then we have to somehow be able to give them a refund or reimbursement associated with their own personal plan. But we don't want them to have to submit an expense report every month for it. So now we start to involve tax law and, you know, all of those lovely. So we're still working through that piece of it, trying to figure out, because we have received a couple of mobile device policies from other associations. My CIO network is very good, and my CFO's network is very good. We've had a number of people share with us. I'm kind of trying to craft it from everything. But
I would say that just to add on that, Sam, the PCI piece, which I would put kind of in the spectrum from 0 to 10, if we had to look at this from a continuum of 10 is the most stringent security, is that I think if there's going to be an unfettered open approach and totally enable the user, the balance side being that folks like Jim and Nutrition and some of the other folks in this call, that we have to segment those systems and the access rights around some of the systems that are really intense from a policy and security point of view. I guess that's what makes the job such a challenge. Anybody have any parting comments? It's 9:59, and we have 1 minute left. Actually, it just turned to 10. Did anybody have a final comment as we wrap up?
One thing I would put in every single one of your policies, this is one that I stuck in mine. The ACC employees are strictly prohibited from using a company-issued mobile device while operating a motor vehicle. Believe it or not, I was at a conference where Coca-Cola down in Texas somewhere did not have that in their policy. One of their drivers got into an accident and I believe injured himself to the point where he couldn't come back to work. They subsequently said that he did not follow the policy because he was working on his mobile device while he was driving, and he came back and said, well, it was never in the policy, and he won.
Sure.
I know, it makes absolutely no sense, but...
And Sam, what was the one you mentioned about that, Tony, that you liked? What was just not the specifics, but the general intent of that policy that your senior executives probably won't allow? But what was the general intent of that?
It was the mobile device, if it's connected to the network, has to be treated as a corporate device. That way, if they're skirting around, like if somebody's in, right now we have all these filters, right, for web surfing, if it runs through everything, but then somebody comes in with their, 4G, LG, LTE, and, surfs a bad site and somebody sees it over their shoulder, that we're not responsible. Kind of like we used to worry about, somebody's looking at something and it's, sexual in nature and it's abusive to an admin or something on the corporate computer. Well, now they can't do it. I mean, we've got something enforced, but they come with a mobile and they're on their 3G. It's, I think that's sort of like, at least we're going to have a policy in effect to say, hey, we're treating this as corporate, and corporate has certain rules.
Yeah, the way it reads in my policy is personally owned mobile devices are your property. However, once connected to the ACC network, they must be treated, used, and safeguarded as an ACC-owned device. That's kind of the way that I state it.
I like that.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good language.
Jim from Nutrition. Just we're small enough. Our policy simply anybody wants to use work-related stuff outside of the office or at home, we simply provide the device, which is mostly laptops. But from a financial issue, we're small enough that that's not a problem.
Well, I appreciate. Go ahead. Final comment.
Yeah, it's just Sam and Mick, and again, I'm sorry, I've got a bunch of final comments, but this will be my last one, I promise. With the rollout of Windows 8 on the Surfaces, I've had Windows 8 on my Asus Slate here for probably 6 or 8 months, and I mean, I just love it. But with the Surfaces coming out, I'm looking at replacing laptops here at our organization with the Surfaces. So again, Windows Mobile device management is going to be a real up-and-coming thing here within our organization.
So you're trying to say Windows Surface rules?
I like Windows 8. Windows Surface RT, I don't know about, I don't even have one of those, but I do have the full-blown Windows 8 package on my Asus Slate, and I really enjoy it. But it's different.
I have seen it. It is quite nice. The CTO has it and likes it a lot. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I hope everybody got a lot out of this. I certainly did. And I'm going to stop this, record it. I'm going to provide this back to everybody as a soft copy for everybody to have it for their records. So I hope this met everybody's expectation.
Yes, it's good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.